welcome to the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I am your host, Courtney Beck, and today we have John Rota. John is an award-winning producer, author of Let Go, Let Golf, and an executive known for creating compelling content that blends storytelling with advanced technologies for clients such as those of Walmart, Google, and Samsung. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to welcome John Rota.
Thank you, Courtney. I appreciate it.
John, I am thrilled to have you on the podcast here. I have to let our listeners know, I enjoy getting to know our guests that come on the podcast at least like one session before. And when you and I spoke to each other, our conversation, and this is just a tribute to your incredible personality and sense of humor, but I think it went on for at least 2 hours.
Yeah, it was a minute, actually. It went quick.
It was.
It was really fun.
So I really did. I enjoyed it. I'm so happy to have you on here, John. So I would love to jump right into it. So if you could please provide the listeners just a background and introduction of yourself.
Sure. My career has been a blend of storytelling, creativity, and innovation. Whether it was in film or advertising, or even now as an author. I started my career at HBO. I had the privilege of starting there in New York and in LA. I used to work at HBO Sports, then HBO Films in LA. And then in more recent advertising, I've worked at several agencies, as you said, in brands like Walmart, Samsung, Google, Target, you name it, I've probably worked on it. Basically, I help craft narratives that connect with audiences. It's really that simple. At my core, I love creating. So whether it's a campaign or some kind of advertising or a film or a book. And Let Go, Let Golf is essentially the latest evolution of that passion.
Fantastic. Thank you, John, for that introduction. And I have to present the books right here. So Let Go, Let Golf, Mindful Ways to Practice with Purpose. So I cannot wait to jump right into the book itself. So John, why did you write the book at this particular time in your life?
Well, that's a great question. The impetus of the book was really from my time in Los Angeles. I lived in Los Angeles for a decade, a little over, and I used to play a lot of golf with my friends, and we used to play a lot of games while we practice. And I used to say to them, what would be cool? Who would benefit from this? Anybody who plays golf, because what it did was take our mind off the game to create some sort of flow state where you don't even realize you're practicing, but you're getting better because you're enjoying it. So essentially, this book comes from years of playing golf, thinking about life, and then realizing that the two reflections of the golf and life are simultaneous, right? They're mirror images of each other. And that's because it took 10 years to really write it. I was reading a lot of self-help books by, Alan Watts and Wayne Dyer and Bruce Lee and Krishnamurti and Carolyn Mace. And Neville Goddard is a huge influence of mine. And so knowing that like golf is a mental game and so is life. And so a lot of those lessons correlated really well with it. And it became more of a mindfulness handbook as opposed to just a golf lessons book. So I wanted to share the lessons that the game has taught me about focus, patience, resilience, and most importantly, letting go of what you can't control. So there's a lot of stoicism involved as well. And I felt like there really wasn't a golf book out there exactly like it, especially written by an amateur. And I pitched it to a publisher and they loved it. And, the rest is basically history. And I'm really proud to have it out there and people are giving me a lot of good reviews. So I'm really happy that people enjoy it.
Well, John, first off, a big congratulations on the book. I have to say that when I read it, I felt that this book was not just for golfers, but honestly for everybody. And to your very point, I think what resonated with me the most was the fact of the crossover lessons that you could find within sport. So of course, in this case, golf, but then also transitioning into leadership, the life lessons in general, and then business. And so that's what really caught my attention. I want to take it back though. Who introduced you to golf in general, and what age was that?
Very young. My grandfather, I have a few stories. A lot of people have really responded well from the grandfather stories in my book, but my grandfather was the main influence of learning golf as a child, just because I used to go into his backyard a lot when I was a kid and just hit balls. He used to have this huge net. He'd always have all this equipment around. So of course, when you're an adolescent or even younger, like 8, 9, um, you grab his stuff and go hit while they're barbecuing and talking adult talk. And that's how I started. I didn't play till I was about 17, quite frankly. I never really went out to play golf, but I was always around it. My dad played for work, and he'd always bring me back. He'd win a putter or win a glove or win a shirt or whatever. And I'd always have golf around me and the equipment around me, and I'd always mess around in the house. But that's how it started with me. It was just house playing. And so what happened was I started to chip in my backyard and putt on my rug, and I actually was getting better. I didn't realize it, but I was developing a swing and developing a tempo and developing a rhythm. So I always preach playing from home, especially if you play golf and you live in places that have winter months. Find those spots in your house that you can play and practice. And essentially, my grandfather taught me that stuff because he was always practicing at home. And he was a huge influence on me as far as humor goes and as far as golf goes. So he was great. And he was a tough audience because he's old school. So he's not going to give you a lot of credit much. And, when you start getting a little bit better, he's not going to give you any more advice either, because he wants to beat you. You know what I mean? So it kind of fueled my competitive spirit. So I would give my grandfather and my dad all the credit in the world for my golf acumen and my love for it.
When you pay tribute, though, to your grandfather, not only taught you about sportsmanship, but he did do a little bit of like smack talk too. So you speak about that like reverse psychology. Because could you maybe elaborate on that particular part of the book?
Yes, I'm more than happy to talk to my grandfather, who passed away at 96, like 10 years ago. So he would be
Oh,
106. He was great.
no.
He was the kind of guy who would fix a sink because he used to be a plumber. He was also a councilman in New Jersey. He has a street named after him,
Mhm.
and in Saraville, New Jersey. And he also, was a plumber. He was an entrepreneur. He was a self-made man from Brooklyn, came to Jersey, and had a family of 4. And he's the kind of guy who would fix a sink, tell a joke, and drain a 20-footer for par all before lunch. You know what I mean? He taught me the fundamentals of the game, but more importantly, he basically taught me how to carry myself while playing. There's a lot of memories that stick out, but one particular one is that he never let a bad shot really ruin his round or his day. So he would get on me if I started getting a little pouty, but he would laugh it off, make a funny comment, and move on and just continue to play and enjoy himself. And that's a lesson I like to carry with me every time I tee it up, essentially, and every time I even, work with people or have a difficult situation. So it's an interesting reminder. So that's when it was before I really was realizing it consciously, but subconsciously I was realizing that golf has a lot of life lessons in it. And he was teaching it to me, not knowing and unbeknownst, but it was his wisdom that was being passed down to me through his actions. And I think that is a huge way people actually absorb information. You can tell a kid one thing, but if you show him and he sees it works, then he learns it a little bit differently. So that really sticks out. And I think about it almost every time I'm out there. I always, I'll think of something funny that I think my dad and him would laugh at, or that kind of thing. It's an
Oh,
interesting
yeah.
connection to my deceased dad and my deceased grandfather when I'm at the golf course, because I imagine that they're there with me.
I almost consider it like a skill. Like you're right, it was a lesson that was taught to you. But the
Yeah.
quicker that you're able to keep something, if you will, in the past and to move forward, I feel like I learned that in gymnastics.
Golf demands trust and flow, right? Overthinking kills a good swing. Overthinking makes you freeze up, just like it kills momentum in life, overthinking and not trusting. And I think that's the key. That's why breathing, that's why I talk about in the book, breathing, visualization, positive self-talk. They're extremely powerful tools because they bring us back to center. They bring us back to ourselves, and in the midst of all the chaos, we can really realize that, it's the meaning we're putting on something rather than what it is. And so if you can center yourself and control those emotions, you'll perform better, whether you're standing over a putt or a drive or a really tough second shot, or you're in a conference room presenting to the CEO or the board members or whatever the case is. So you can apply all of those techniques before you hit a ball or join a meeting. And that's what I think is really profound about it. One of many
That
things, but That's a really important one though, just to stay present.
Such a good point. Like there's so many distractions, take you away from what you're supposed to be focusing on, but to be able to really stay in the present moment and enjoy everything. So, how has the state of gratitude, being grateful, because you speak a lot in the book about your experiences to live in Singapore, you played golf in Indonesia. So, could you maybe elaborate on just the concept of gratitude within your experience of golf?
It's just, if you're grateful, you're happy. It's easier to be happy with a grateful heart, um, than in any other really circumstance. And especially like if you're feeling a little down or you're feeling a little bit blue one day, that's why people say have a gratitude journal. Wake up every morning or every night and write down 5 things that you're grateful for, because it switches your brain off of feeling sorry for itself, getting out of that ego state into sort of like abundance. And I think that it's a way to raise your vibration. And if you're grateful, usually the universe brings you more things to be grateful for. And that's what I'm trying to bring to other people through this book and through these interviews and all that. Is just that if you're at least aware of these things, at least you can make a step in the right direction and hopefully help your life and improve it. And that's really all it's about. We're all here to help each other one way or another and leave this world a little bit better than we came in. And so that's sort of one of my small contributions to it.
I think that's great because when you speak about gratitude, I feel like you have to be very intentional with it. For
Yeah.
me, it's waking up early in the morning and simply just writing down things that day to day that you're grateful for, writing positive affirmations. That's what really starts my day off on a positive note. Regardless, I feel having a positive mindset is a choice because a lot of people would ask me like, are you always that positive? Like, it's like, no, like it's more of a choice because I view every day as a gift. So
Correct.
why not make it positive? you know
Right. Yeah, but I appreciate that you're bringing. It's a great name for a podcast, and that's a really, really worthy cause to bring positivity, especially in a day and age where people are stressed about everything and reading all sorts of news, and social media is embedding their algorithm with a bunch of clickbait. And so I think it's time to show that humanistic quality a little bit more. I think the more the merrier.
I do. I have so many even quotes I want to like really dissect. But this idea of finding your inner peace and Zen mind is paramount to success in not only golf, but in life. More trust, more flow. You can do this through simple breathing techniques, visualization, positive self talk, or all of the above, whatever works for you. So, how is that in like relation to golf and then also in life, how you've been able to transition that lesson, if you will, into life?
Well, I think I think it really speaks to patience. Like in golf, you can't really force a birdie, or you can't force yourself to make a good shot. You have to put yourself in the right position and then let it come, type of thing. So I think that's what it is. It's like business works the same way. Like playing the long game, focusing on fundamentals, trusting the process. I think that's what it's really about, trusting the process, knowing that you're putting the work in, putting the time in, you have the patience to overcome any kind of self doubt or bumps in the road. And you're not going to rush, because if you rush a deal or the process of creating good works, like in advertising or in film, you can't really rush the process. It might take a little longer, but you want to create a good product, and that's the end. Obviously, at the mercy of deadlines and budgets and all that stuff, but you really, really don't want to rush or mess with the formula of creating good work. It's like forcing a risky shot. It usually backfires. You don't want to really force it, but if you take a strategic approach, learning, adapting, making smart choices, you'll find success naturally. That's how I look at it. So the best players and sort of the best executives and leaders I know, they know when to be aggressive and they know when to stay patient. And so I think it's a question of just being able to trust the flow of that, bouncing between aggressiveness, patience, knowing when to chill, knowing when to hold them, and knowing when to fold them, type of thing. So I think that's all comes down to self-awareness, really.
So you're right. Like you have to be patient, but having that, it's kind of, I guess, like mindfulness and enjoying, like you speak about enjoying the journey. And it's not just, you know what I mean? Like it's not just the destination, but you learn so much through that journey. So How could you maybe relate that idea of journey, versus the destination within just an average day on the course playing a game with your buddies, if you will?
Well, I mean, it's like Alan Watts says. It's like you dance to music. You're not turning the song on then turning the song off. It's the in between. It's that
So
three
true.
minutes in between where that's where you're flowing. You're flowing in the in between. So like when you're trusting the process of a golf game, like your life, the enjoyment is all the time in between the first and the 18th holes. So you have if you're out there not enjoying it, what are you doing there? You find another hobby, start playing chess or start climbing or biking, because it's you might not be playing well, but there is an I trust me, I know this personal experience. There is an enjoyment factor you can pull out of it, even though your swing might be a little out there, or maybe you drank too many beers or whatever, with your friends. So I think you want to. It's no fun if you don't enjoy the process, and that's what I talk about with practicing too. The whole point of the book is to enjoy the process of improving. And I think that when you use some of those techniques that are in the book and you focus on the mental side of things, you do see improvement. But you also, what I realize is, and this is the lesson, you don't see just improvement in your golf game. You'll see it in your life because you're using mindfulness techniques, and they don't go away when you jump in your car and take your cleats off. You know what I'm saying? You put your golf bag in your trunk, you still can remain in that state and dwell on things that are really positive about your round, just like you can dwell on things that are positive about your day, just like your gratitude journal. So I think the magic always comes within the process, and this is something I needed to learn with maturity as well. I always, you know, A to B, what's next, what's next. I used to have friends and even girlfriends tell me this stuff back in the day of, you're always on to the next thing, and I remember being like, yeah, I am, and I realized it's really an ego driven sentiment. Really, it's like you're never going to be satisfied like that. And I think that knowing that the process is part of the journey, and maybe even the most enjoyable part, really, because I really loved writing the book. I had so much enjoyment writing this book. I got so much happiness out of it that I realized that the process and the journey of writing it was really what the true happiness is. Like when you have it, you have it. And it's really cool, and you're like, cool, it's done, and I'm marketing it and I'm doing stuff for it. But the process of writing it is really what made me realize I love writing. Process of playing golf, it makes you realize I love playing golf. Process of doing anything, you realize you love it. I think that's where the love is. It's in between. You love a song when you're like, oh, that second hook is so good. That guitar solo rock.
When you actually
You only know it if you listen to it. You're not going to be like, yo, I'm going to put the song on, and then I'm going to fast forward to the end. It's the middle that really, that creates the love. That's really where it's at. So that's, the correlation I would make that makes the most sense. Alan Watts is genius, though. That was his, not mine.
That's fantastic. And when you were writing the book, literally through the journey of writing the book, was there anything that maybe surprised you along the journey, or something that you thought of as you were writing, like, oh, wow, no, I want to like definitely add this. I didn't have this initially.
The whole time, essentially, like, this is really the truth. It's like when you say to somebody, when people are hesitant to start, it's really just about starting, because for some reason, when you start something, the universe or whatever, spirit or whatever you want to say, your higher self, God, however you want to phrase it in your lives, um, somewhat comes down and helps guide you through it. It just pushes you. If you're doing something right and it's aligned with your passion and your gifts, some way or another, you get pushed through and you find the enjoyment. And what happened was I was reading so many things, and I was constantly in absorption mode, thinking that, oh, I can make this a story. Oh, this could be related to, or this could be this story for golf. And this could be this golf lesson. So everything I was reading, I was absorbing and looking at it through the lens of how I can lend it to my book. And so, I was just in that mode for like a year straight. While you're writing, you're just getting this sort of, I'm sure everybody realizes, when you're in, like, you're going to a competition, gymnastics competition, you're in a mode training for it. It's that extra, so that's sort of where I was at with the book. That extra kind of, like, if I'm going to go play a big tournament, it's how you practice before it. It was that that kind of mental state that I was in, and things just kept coming to me. Ideas, a book would drop at the right section, and I would be like, oh yeah, this is perfect. And so a lot of synchronicities would line up, just because I enjoyed the process and because I found happiness in it, and I think because I was following, my intuition, things like that.
But you're right. When you just start, like, whether it's people that come to help you with certain aspects, if it's in business, if it's in sport. I think about even my gymnastics career. There was people that opened up doors to make something, a reality that was once a dream. And so I love how you speak about that. But I want to really get into, John, being out there on the golf course with your buddies, just like situations that I'm sure many people experience when they go to travel. Maybe they're on vacation and they head to the golf course. But this idea where you meet people and it becomes what you kind of termed as like a 5-hour friendship. Could you maybe just elaborate on the
Yeah.
sport of golf and how that actually creates that particular experience?
Well, oftentimes when you go play, you're an average amateur player. You play um, municipal courses or public courses, and a lot of times you get teamed up with random people. So whether you're out there with a friend of yours and and they usually put you together with foursomes, you're going to find two random guys, and you and your buddy are going to play with two other people, maybe a man and his wife, or two dudes, two buddies, whatever the case is. A lot of times they all don't know each other. Everybody's new to each other, and so you're spending a concentrated amount of time with each other, especially if it's slow and there's a lot of people there and you're both waiting in the tee box and you're all sitting there. So you tend to get to know people in a different way, in a very, very kind of a distinct, profound way, because you're not only talking to them about their lives and asking them what their first car was. I have friends of mine that have like documented questions they ask people every time we play. We're always kind of egging the conversation on because we're savvy about it. So he's like, "What's your favorite car? Where did you propose to your wife?" But all these like generic questions that everybody has an answer to, and it's a fun way to get to know somebody. But not only are they speaking to you, but they're swinging, and you're seeing how they handle their bad shots, and you see how good they are with their swing, or how much time they've put into their game, or how they treat you when you lose a ball, or where they look for your ball with you, or did they share their sandwich with you, or do they have a funny story too? Do they ask you questions? So all of these things kind of are relatable to life, because when you meet people, you go through the same kind of process of how you evaluate them. Are they cool? Are they good at what they do? What are they about? But here it's a little different because it's 5 hours of concentrated time through athleticism and social ability. And then after you shake hands and say, "It was nice playing with you," you might not ever see them ever again in your life, but you'll always remember them. If you remember most of them. And I think that's super unique. Sometimes you'll exchange texts. Sometimes you will play again. Sometimes you don't never text them. But the point is that I just find that I found that I wrote a story about that because I thought that was such a profound thing about golf, is that there's so many random people I think about it that I play with throughout my life that I'll probably never see again, but I'll remember that ground, or I remember this guy let me use his driver and I was a kid, and whatever the case was. And you go, wow, I wonder what happened to those people. But it's like you become best friends for 5 hours, and then all of a sudden you don't see each other. You're strangers again. So actually, it's a really interesting way to look at the game, which is sort of the uniqueness, I believe, about the book, because it's like a different type of golf book. It's extrapolating different philosophies and ideas from it that are a little more than just like, this is how you grip a club.
You speak about even character during a round. I thought that was really interesting, like how somebody is able to recover maybe from a bad, shot versus maybe they were celebrating like crazy, and then how do they refocus? You really do get to learn a lot about that person, it seems like, within those 5 hours.
Yeah, if you're paying attention, right? Exactly. A lot of times you're so focused on your own game that you don't really. But I've been on both sides of the coin. I mean, I've thrown clubs and and done my share of yelling and screaming. I'm not always great at it, trust me. So I'm no saint at it, but I'm trying to get better at it as I've gotten a little older and more mature about it. I don't as much because you're just like, whatever, I haven't practiced in a week, so what do I expect? You do get to know somebody pretty well. I think that it's interesting when you're socializing and doing something athletic. The difference is that there's so much time between shots, so you have time to talk and get into a conversation and tell a joke before you even hit the next. It might be 5 minutes before you hit again. So it's not like tennis where you're like going to be out of breath. He's not going to tell me about his work while we're playing across the net. So it's a little different because you have the time and you fill the space, and it's all part of the experience, which is what makes it so unique.
I think that's so interesting. And I would love to go from just the sport, if you will, like of golf, and how
Yeah.
you have translated those lessons over. I mean, as I mentioned, with your introduction, award-winning producer, you are also an executive, all of this. success, what particular lessons, maybe even as of recently, have you been able to draw from your time on the courses that you play into your business present day?
I tend to wake up every morning and I visualize how I like my perfect day to go. And I've been, I go off and on with that habit, but I've been really hardcore about it in the last year or so. And I think that your mind is always shaping your reality, right? When you visualize success, whether in golf or life or business, you're preloading your brain to make it happen. Life is a journey, and so is golf. So, using those techniques help both improve, essentially. You know what I mean? You can deliberately put yourself in a feel good state. And I think that's sort of what the whole point is. Like, I think that people think, oh, I'm in a mood and I have to stay in this mood, but you don't. You can actually reverse that mood and use techniques that are very simple and available to everybody to get yourself into something better. And then all of a sudden your day changes, and then maybe you get a good phone call, and maybe you meet somebody that's really uplifting to you. And so that's the message I really want to convey there, because it's like, we have more control than we think.
One thing I want to ask you in particular is when you were living in Singapore, I can't remember what course it was, but like monkeys were crossing as you and your friends were playing. Like, what is it about playing golf, understanding and appreciating, if you will, just the world around you and nature? Does that ever equate to a more creative mindset? Do you ever think of ideas when you're out there playing golf?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, what's more inspirational than nature? I mean, every artist in the world has been inspired by nature. I mean, that's why they say, like, walk barefoot and just kind of pick up the positive energy from the earth. Yeah, that was Ria Bintan. That was my birthday. To play golf in Singapore, a lot, really good golf. Some of the good courses are like on Indonesian islands, right? Like basically an hour ferry ride, maybe 45 minutes from Singapore. So, the building I was living in, my building manager, who I became good friends with, had a good friend who was managing director of this place called Ria Bintan, which is a Gary Player course. And we got to play. We had the full-on VIP treatment for my birthday that year. And I was playing there already. We played in Malaysia, played a couple places before that, but it was so epically beautiful. But yeah, when I saw the monkeys walk by, it was just it was a reminder of the enjoyment of life. Like, we're able to share this land with them. And the only reason I'm close to where they live is because they're living on this beautiful slice of land, but I'm also sharing it with them at this time. And it's hard not to kind of have an appreciation for like this indigenous animal that I would never see in New York, right? And for the flowers that I'm seeing and the air that I'm breathing. So it was all, I enjoy not being in my comfort zone. I'm one of those people. And so I feel like it's invigorating to not always be in the mundane routine all the time. You need to have a little flex in your life. I think I think Dr. Ramani says that's a sign of a healthy person. The more flexible you are, it's like flexible muscles. The more healthy you are, the more fit you are, the more flexible you are. And I think if you're rigid, it's not helping your life in any way. You're living your life out of fear. So being on a course like that with these indigenous animals and these beautiful flowers, it just does remind you of the beauty of life. And it's hard not to be inspired. You do think of things because you're out of your normal environment. So that tends to be inspiring. You go, wow, I thought of a new idea, a new angle because I'm looking at a flower I've never seen, or whatever the case is. But it's so epically beautiful there that it's hard to explain. It's just so hot and it's just so tropical, and the food is different. And I love, and you're talking to guys that are from all sorts of areas of the world. One's from Australia, the other's from Singapore, the other's from Indonesia, and you have all these different stories, but we have golf in common. So it's a cool bonding experience, but it's also cool to smack talk in every language. Because I say in the book, smack talk does not have a language barrier. It always comes across no matter where you're from, which is fun. So they think I'm from New York. People, New York. They come at you a little bit. They want that attitude. They want it. They're like, wait, I didn't realize New Yorkers are nice. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm a human. What are you talking about? But it's funny that it has that stigma, and they like expect. So sometimes you got to give it to them.
No, I think that's great. And I think that's what makes it, I'm sure fun when you're out there on the course with your buddies. I mean, just from all around the world. And at the same time, being able to share just that sport in common, though, and what that sport brings, just the smack talk, that sense of reverse psychology, trying to throw them off their game. I don't know. I just think that's why I love about sport is it really does. It has a unique way of pulling so many different backgrounds together just in one moment, even if it's just that one moment during your birthday, but to remember distinctively all the details that you list in the book, Like I legitimately, I felt like I was on the golf course just reading your book. And that's a tribute to obviously you just being able to be so descriptive.
I appreciate that. Well, here's the thing about smack talk too, though. I will say that golf humbles everybody. So the second you get cocky, the golf gods will send your ball into the woods. You know what I mean? My grandfather had a lot of fun with this because I used to do that. I used to get a little, I was like 14, 15-year-old kid who would be a little cocky and talk smack to him. And then, but he taught me to compete, but to respect the game and my opponents. A little smack talk is good, but golf has a way of keeping your game honest. You can't constantly do it because eventually there's going to, there's plenty of fodder for them to have on you too. So there's a fine balance between that. But I think it's all really just to have fun with it and enlighten the mood a little bit, like not take yourself so seriously. You know what I mean? So I think that's the reminder of talking smack and joking with your friends because you want them to play well and enjoy themselves, but you don't want to get so angry that you ruin the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you remind me, I mean, even growing up, I remember our coach, he would always try to tease us like my maiden name was Courtney Gladys. And so he'd be like, hey, Gladys, I don't know if you could do this. I don't know. Let me see if you could do this one. And so it's this idea of like, yeah, I'm going to show you I could do this.
Right.
But you're right. On the flip side of the coin, you had to draw it back because talk about humility in the sport of gymnastics, just like
Absolutely.
golf. You could get literally slam down so quickly and you have to pick yourself back up. But it was an excellent lesson of life that you do get, figuratively sometimes slammed down and you're like, wow, where do I go from here? And you have to be able to rise back up again, hopefully stronger the second time. But it does. I think sports in general have a way of humbling you, but also, like you said, just incorporating the fun part of it and making it light.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, to remember those things because it is a game after all. You're out there to have fun, and I think that the real heightened awareness of it all is life is too. It's hard to remember that, but it is like sort of a game, and we're sort of the director, producer, and the writer of our films, and we could sort of change it all we want. Trust me, I'm learning how to do this myself, but I know it's true, and so there's a profound truth to that. There's a real truth, and sort of like, wow, man, how do you learn how to do that? And so I'm really, that's why I read a lot of this kind of stuff. The stuff I wrote about, I read a lot because I'm always interested in the cheat codes of life. What are the cheat codes? What do the ancients know that we don't know? What can we learn from our ancestors? Because I do think we forget things and we tend to repeat the same problems. So these are things you can contemplate in a 4.5 hour golf round. You can sit there and think about all these things, and if you're with the right partners, you can talk about it. And you can talk about life as you play golf, and those are the most fun times. You're playing. The sun is setting. It's a twilight round, and you're talking about something really fun and interesting while you're playing. And before you know it, you're getting through the round because you're playing well. You're not looking for a ball. You're right in play, and that's what's fun about golf. The more boring it is, the better you're playing. It's like if I'm looking, taking the cart and I'm going all the way across to look for my ball or trying to find it in the water and grab it out and all this I'm taking all this time. That's like a whole adventure. But if you're just in the fairway and then on the green and then putting and then hitting off again in the fairway, it's like it's nice and boring and fun and systematic and quick and easy, and you're not looking for anything. And I think that's what's fun about it because it's like it's actually humorous too because the more boring it is, the better you're playing.
And are you more of a competitive, like, do you actually compete in different tournaments or do you just do the sport more socially in general?
I both, but I mostly just play socially. But I do compete too once in a while. I mean, I do if I play more. Like a lot of times I just don't get. I live in the city, so it's a little bit of that's a whole other conversation. But it's tough to get out sometimes. I usually play in Florida when I go visit, and I have a lot of friends in California. Obviously, I used to live there, so I'd go there and I play in all over the area. But it's mostly for fun. A lot of the rounds I go play are really, I call them practice rounds. I'm going to go play and I'm going to score, but they're just to get my bearings back. It's a game you have to play a lot to play well. You lose feeling, even though you know how to do it. Especially the short game and things like that, the feel of it leaves you if you haven't played in a while. Even very simple stuff like where am I positioning the ball and how am I holding the club here and what kind of shot do I need? Those are things you forget and you only remember when you play or you practice. And my whole goal here through the book, really, just for golfers, for non-golfers, this is a great self-help book in a way, but for golfers, this is like a way to enjoy your practice time as opposed to being stressed about, oh, I don't have time and So if you don't have that much time, you can kind of use the techniques in the book and make the most of your time. And then also when you do have time, you can enjoy playing, and you might want to practice longer just because you're having a blast doing it. As opposed to being like, I'll never get better. And the whole idea is to avoid frustration and have more focus and flow with it.
I think that's a good point because my perception of golf is I don't know, it looks to be a very difficult sport when you think about the mental aspect. My perception of the sport is that it's very difficult to maintain.
Well, I think it's because it's an individual sport. A lot of, I don't, it's tough to maintain a high level long, but for a long time. I also think the competition is so fierce, and there's always so many good people coming up that it's, you have to really practice, a lot. And sometimes people have lives get in the way. They have other business deals, they have kids coming and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of times that happens to people, and they don't have the time. They're not focused enough. And also, the competition's crazy. And then you get older, maybe you get an injury. Maybe you don't have the same desire. Maybe you're already wealthy and doing your thing. You've already won a few championships. Maybe you don't care. So there's a lot of factors that go in. But you have to want it. If you really want to be great and you really want to be the best and you really miss winning that much, which I believe they all do, because once you get a taste of it, you want it again and again. So I think golf is really competitive now these days, especially post Tiger era. Tiger really made the game a lot more athletic, and I think a lot more people play. I think that's dipped. That statistic is dipped as far as golf's popularity goes for the last 10 years ish. But, he brought a lot of people into the game that otherwise wouldn't be. And I think it's more athletic now than it ever was.
I think that's a good point. Just even sports in general is the nutrition is much
Right.
better. The physical trainers now, the psychologist, obviously for the
Right.
mental aspect. But there's a lot of things that, even when I was in sport, as far as resources that we did not have that athletes have today. So, John, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Plenty of Positivity podcast. We always love to end with a positive quote or perhaps a positive phrase to leave the community with today.
Um, yeah, I just, like one of my core beliefs is lead with laughter. And so I think laughter is super important to keep things in perspective. If you can laugh even at yourself, you'll stay loose, you'll stay present, you'll enjoy the ride a little bit more. So whether it's in business or the golf course, the best leaders always make people feel comfortable. And I think laughter is a big part of that. And I think that when you're leading, it's not just about telling people what to do, but it's about them telling you what to do in many ways. And I think that if you can make them feel comfortable and be themselves, you're going to get the most out of your teams. And I'm a big believer in that whole part of it.
That's such a good point. And I do think you enjoy life more that way.
Yeah.
And people are more receptive to that. But I don't know, there's something to be said about leading with laughter. So I appreciated that on your LinkedIn for a core belief. So, John, this has been an absolute blast. Just hearing about, of course, your book, all the lessons across life, sport, career. So, do you have a positive quote for the community to end this incredible episode with?
I do actually, Courtney, and it's do well while doing good. It's Ben Franklin, not me. I can't take credit for it. But really, it's about whatever you pursue, be excellent at it, but also bring value to others. So that's a key formula and a winning formula in golf and in life. And I think that if you are doing something, you might as well help people along the way as well.
I think there's so much truth to the level of satisfaction or even fulfillment when you are helping others.
Absolutely. I appreciate you reading my book and having such a positive response to it. So that's you doing something good for me. And I appreciated that very much.
Absolutely, John. Even when I was going through it, I'll show it up here one more time for those who are visually watching this on YouTube. But it's one of those books where it truly is for a variety of people. It's not just golfers. And I loved the intertwining of life lessons, a lot of meaning behind how sport is really translatable to those life lessons and even in business. So
Yeah.
I give you a big congratulations on this book. It was excellent. And I cannot wait to release this episode for everybody to hear. So go get your book right now. Let go, let golf. John
The links,
Rota.
the links, the links below.
Yeah, yeah. Link below.